Hello, this is Mark. I am going to be starting a series of courses or classes or whatever you want to call it on a topic of big history. Um, yeah, this is kind of an introduction to what I am embarking on and wanting to do. Before I get into that, I want to say that the reason why I'm doing this is history is something that has always really, really interested me. And the topic of big history is something that I've always been just a little kind of very, very intrigued by. There's all kinds of history and studies, like you can study the history of your country, United States history, Cambodian history. You can study life history, biology. You can study, cosmology, the birth of the universe, but big history, as we'll see, literally tries to put everything together in totality of the history of literal existence of the universe to today. So, yeah, better stated, it is a survey of the past in all its possible scales. It's literally going from the birth of the universe as we know it, 13.8 billion years ago, to today, and everything in between, which this could be a extremely long, crazy history course. It uses multidisciplines to do a study of history at this scale. You were going to bring in cosmology, biology, geology, chemistry, just to name a few in history. And the thing about it is, someone I'm going to get into shortly, the trying to relay information about big history or teach it or even understand it fully is an extremely difficult thing to do, because you can go and become very good at certain disciplines of science. You can become very good in biology and have degrees in geology or cosmology or whatever. But very, very few people have really strong knowledge and degrees in all of the above. So typically when an endeavor would be taken on the history of all things, it is kind of from a slant of, a specific discipline. Like, okay, here's the history according to biology, the history of life, or cosmology. Let's go with the history of the universe from the Big Bang and how all that happened. But what would happen if you took like all of these things together and you tried to map out all of things in a start to current timeline situation, and be able to teach that and explain that? It's definitely a tall order. And one thing I like in researching this topic of big history is one of the best explanations is, big history is basically someone or a group of people trying to bring in multidisciplines together and explain at a high level the history of all things, at the risk of sounding completely stupid about some certain things. That's the best explanation, because you're probably not an expert in all things, and you're trying to explain like here's when life started, and here's the different stages, and then here's to Homo sapiens, and here's the different eras of that, and oh, by the way, here is how stars were formed, and I mean, there's just all these things that you're really, really trying to bring together. So, a little bit about me. I had a job in the military like long time ago, over 20 years ago. I think one of the reasons this fascinated me is my job in the military was an all-source analyst. Basically, that is someone that you are not specifically focused on a certain discipline of intelligence or something like that. You are literally bringing all things together and trying to get a cohesive picture for a command, or to explain a situation. And I think this is why it's always appealed to me, is because, like, I don't want to call it being a jack of all trades but a master of none, but it really is it's bringing multifaceted things together to convey okay, how did we get here? Effectively, is what you're trying to convey. You're not trying to go into the weeds of many things. For instance, like, you're not trying to discuss the intricacies of DNA and RNA and all these things, or you're not trying to dive into Confucian philosophy. You are literally covering, DNA exists, and it led to, species populating, which led to Homo sapiens, which led to things like Confucian philosophy at a more higher level, if you will. So, and a lot of times, we, going into this course, I mean, you're starting at 13.8 billion years. If you gave all of time the exact same, ratio of attention, I mean, human history and the Earth would be like the very small portion toward the end, and you have all this formation of stars and the universe and everything. So really the focus on this is going to be on the large patterns of change. There may be billions of years in between some of these subjects, or it could be a couple of years in between some of these subjects when we get into human history. But really it's going to focus on the things that matter of change. And because this course is being taught by a human being for human beings, there will be a natural bias to cover human history more in depth than we're going to talk about how the dinosaurs did things or something like that, or stars. I mean, the focus on human history, as we'll get over into in a minute with the agrarian and other eras of human Homo sapien history are really where we're going to kind of put the brakes on and start looking at how things have gotten to where they'll be today. So I did not come up with all this course on my own. I don't have the time and the education and all that to do all that. But I want to give credit to someone that I am very much following kind of their template. David Christian is an amazing person. He's a historian and scholar, has multiple degrees, including a PhD from Oxford University. Listing some of his memberships here. He's been a teacher, a professor at multiple universities, including San Diego State. And one of the reasons I really wanted to use his as a template is he is literally someone who had coined the term big history from the 1980s. He was, not to say he's the first one who thought about it, but he's the first one to say, what if we did a course that brought everything together from the inception of the universe all the way to today, and could possibly teach that? Is that possible? And working with many other scientists, professors, whatever, in multidisciplines, he was able to put together one of the first big courses that was labeled Big History. And I've listened to his course, and there's a lot of other great folks out there that have done similar things. I'm trying to remember some of the names of other books and things I've read, but one thing I found was interesting is that he gave a TED talk. It was like I think it was like an 18-minute summarization of big history, like everything in 18 minutes, which is really impressive. And he was introduced by, I believe, Bill Gates, and Bill Gates supported him bringing this big history course to secondary schools in the United States and Australia. So I just thought if you were going to kind of use anyone's course and way of breaking things down with big history, then there's probably no better person than David Christian. I don't plan on reciting his course word for word. I'm kind of using it as a template, doing shortening, deviating, or all kinds of things. I will kind of figure it out as I go. But why reinvent the wheel when someone already has a great focusing on change, how certain events in history, big history, are kind of pivot points to go to the next thing. So speaking of which, the structure of the course are actually multiple courses. I don't know how many of these we're going to do, but we'll start it and get going, and we'll see how long it takes us. But these are the main. I think there's how many there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's like 8, and then the last one. So really, these are the main pivot points, if you will, that the main headings where we will have courses under these. But these are the main ones that you'll see, like the multidisciplines with, cosmology, 13 billion years ago, 13.8. That when the universe as we know it, with the Big Bang, came into existence, right? All evidence points to a bang, something that literally caused a mass inflation, or not inflation, but just growing of the universe as we know it, to expanding what it is to be today. Then we get to the next part, which are the first stars, and is the astronomy part of it. How these mass came together in clumps and basically formed the first stars. Then we go into, we've got hydrogen and these simple elements. How do we get these more complex elements that make things like planet Earth and human beings and all kinds of stuff like that, your dog and all that? How do we get there? And that is from the elements that were created in dying stars, exploding stars, if you will, going into chemistry. Then we go into geology, which, you have all these newly formed elements from these, simple elements that form the stars, cause these fusion into other elements. Now we have things like Earths and planets and solar systems that we will be getting into. And then now we have planet Earth, the only place that we know for certain right now. Then we get into life. Its creation, how it came about, and the evolution of life, and some of the mysteries there, but then some of the things that we do know by observation and science. Then getting into, finally, good old human beings, which, you'll see that we have these massive, subjects, and then we get into Homo sapiens, and then it's like, all right, now we're going to kind of more, with bias, kind of explore human beings a little bit more in depth. And we have the Paleolithic area, which is the beginning of Homo sapiens. The agrarian area, which is very important, that is the appearance of agriculture in all society as we know it, stemming from that. And then now the modern area, which we have, multiple social, economic, cultural transformations, many things that we will get into that has shaped the world that we know today. And then the last part of it, we will kind of get into the future, which you're not really supposed to in a history course, but knowing where we are in these, different eras. I mean, where is it leading us to, good or bad? What are, these trends and these things throughout history, this causation, what is it bringing us to going forward? So this is more of a timeline of what this kind of looks like. And as you can see, that he calls them thresholds up at the top, but you see these 8 thresholds. The Big Bang, the stars, then you have the chemicals that are formed, the other elements, formation of the planets, life on Earth. Then you have, human beings with collective learning, agriculture, and then the modern revolution. And then under that, you see that there is, from literally almost 14 billion years ago to today, you've got everything from first stars, galaxies, some photosynthesis, some dinosaurs and mammals. Like, it is a lot, and I actually saw another chart that was like, it literally tried to put everything, and it was a poster that literally was the size of a room, just spread out, and, not anything that you could fit, anyway readable on a, TikTok or whatever, presentation. But, it can get pretty crazy, and it's kind of the high level stuff that will be covered and gone over. And you can see how the timeline kind of spreads, 14 billion years ago, and all of a sudden we're separated by, increments of like 1,000 years to today. So, that's kind of what we're going to be covering, and it's going to be great. Hopefully it'll take a lot less time to go through all this, right? So what is the point of this? Like, it's great. This might end up being ASMR for some people, serving big history. I don't know, but why would you even want to do this? And I think really what drove me to it, and I think what really is great about Big History, is it shows a better understanding of your place in the world. If you look at like all, religions and stuff like that, and I will not get into, the reality of religions or true or false or science or anything like that, but it was an explanation of the world and your place in it. So like that drives human beings, to know their place in the history, whether it's the Bible, which are counted, genealogies all the way back to Adam. And there was a proposal of the earth being, 6,000 years old, but that was trying to get an understanding of where we're at in the timeline and our place in things, right? And that is what big history is trying to use science to do as well, based on our understandings and what we know with all these disciplines. Here's what's happened before, and here is where we're at now, and what does that mean? So I thought it was kind of funny, as we learn more and more using science, what if in the end with big history and all this study, and in our understanding, we just find out in the end it's all a simulation. And it's kind of the funny thing here with this tweet or X or whatever you want to call it, that Johnny's son, he put his Sims, got them educated, sent them to university. And if you're familiar with the video game The Sims, they all became computer scientists and realized that they were living in a simulation, so he quickly ended it. That's part of it is, we study all this and we're trying to get a grasp of it and our place of it and what it all means, if there is a meaning to it. Maybe you're not looking for a meaning, but at least just understanding your place and where you are in the whole grand scheme of things, right? So that is kind of what big history, not whether or not it's intent, that is kind of a byproduct of what you will be able to gain from it. It's just more of a sense of where you're at and things, right? So look forward to doing this. I look forward to learning a lot as I teach it. I think there's no better way to learn things than when you actually try and teach it yourself. And I think it was Feynman that said, if you can't explain something yourself confidently, then you probably don't understand it, which big history is hard to do because I'm not trying to fully understand all these disciplines, but at least I want to understand the high level and be able to talk to it and share, and go through all this. So I look forward to doing this. I will be posting these as much as I can, and I look forward to learning this and going through it. And anyone who wants to jump in this journey with me, I would love for you to be a part of it. But thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day. All right, bye-bye.